So first thing that I want to say is I've attended a lot of professional conferences in my day, as well as probably all have. And I'd like to first of all say thank you to everyone. This is the largest end of day on a Friday panel attendance that I have seen in a long time.
This is better than some of the midday Thursday panels that we've been to.
Without my boss being there and all of us employees. So thank you for coming and attending what we are hoping to be a very, very, very informative, very engaging panel. So first thing I'll let everybody know is the title of our presentation, Investigating the Use of Tabletop Role-Playing Games as Potential Therapeutic Intervention for Individuals with Social Anxiety. That's the title of the research article. Make sure in your feedback form to include your email. Every participant in today's panel presentation will receive a copy of the research study. Thank you for your attendance. Please feel free to, let me say this gingerly or delicately, share it with people, not in a way that won't get us more hits on the website and interest from the Journal of Social Work with Groups, which is where this was published about a year ago. Actually, November 22nd of this month will be 1 year that our study was published in the Journal of Social Work with Groups.
Yeah.
And we have, at this point, we've generated over 2,000 hits. We'll talk about all the specifics as we go through, but first we're going to head and introduce our panel and our presentation peoples to everybody. You know who I am, so I'm Jack, my name's on the thing. Okay, we're good. So we're going to start over on this side.
Sure. Hi everybody, my name is Colleen Madrigale. I'm a licensed clinical social worker working in central Pennsylvania. I primarily work with dialectical behavioral therapy with adolescents and teens. And I'm also a board member of the Bodhana Group for the last probably about 3 or 4 years already.
And you also witnessed a lot of our progress utilizing this model with a transitional age youth population.
I did, yes.
We can't mention where from.
Yes, yeah. Jack and I actually, that's how we met, was I got connected with him to hire him as a contractor to provide clinical services, and then got to see the benefit of those clinical services in real time.
Yes. All right.
Hi, my name is Matthew Verrett. I'm a master's level social worker and registered social worker from Ontario, Canada. I was one of the lead writers and researchers for the project, and a board member for Bodhana, and a therapist as well, utilizing cognitive behavioral therapy and a bunch of other therapies and such.
All right.
Hi, I'm Crimson Pleasure. I am one of the research subjects.
Yes. Okay. Did you want to share any other, that you do stuff online?
Oh God.
Things like that?
I am the founder of Real Women in Gaming, which is an online gaming group that specializes in diversity and creating safe places for people in all aspects. I am a streamer, mom, wife, mental health advocate, and member of Bodhana Group now.
Yep. And sir?
Hi, my name is James Kirk. Everybody calls me Captain. You now have my permission. So I was also one of the GMs on the research project and ran one of the groups. I'm also a therapeutic GM with the Bodhana Group. I've been working with them now for 8.5 years at this point. We're going on 9. I do not possess a human services degree. However, I was trained in the Bodhana model, and I came to them with about 39 years of experience at a game table, just running and writing my own adventures, running various RPGs. I have an encyclopedic board game brain. I fit with what they were doing. So they brought me on board, and now I've been with them for 8.5 years.
If you're looking for Cap at the convention, look in the board game library area. Yeah.
And or at a table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude is a super immersive, engaging GM too.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike actually plays in some of my for funsies games when I'm not doing this professionally.
Didn't I tell some of you use the term for funsies in Bodhana?
It's a thing. Yeah, it's absolutely a thing.
Right? All right. So this, as far power helps devices work. All right. Oh, I actually had everybody's individual slides, and then we added some people. Okay.
That's us. Don't worry about it.
That is us. So, basically, this is just the Bodhana Group, as you've probably heard over most indicators here, we use tabletop games for therapeutic, clinical, and skill building goals. Our approach, or the Bodhana model, as we like to kind of talk about, is we choose a modality or a therapeutic theoretical approach. CBT, DBT, REBT, pick your alphabet, right? And we find a way to analog or replicate those therapeutic techniques under that modality, utilize the mechanics or the narrative structure and flow of gameplay in RPG. This is not RPG therapy. It's therapeutically or clinically applied and monitored role-playing game as a delivery system. Or as we say in Bodhana, the game is not the destination, it is the vehicle. I just want to make that point very apparent, because it also, we talk a lot about it in the PowerPoint about this. So yeah, you'll find out a ton of great stuff about Bodhana, but all right. James, do you want to talk about Kids on Bikes?
Yeah. So the game that we chose to use for this research study is a game called Kids on Bikes. Actually, the creator, Doug, is here this weekend, if you get a chance to talk to him. It's a fantastic system that really takes advantage of collaborative storytelling. The idea is that the players create the town that they live in for the GM. The GM asks them a series of questions. They feed the GM information on what the name of the town is, why it's economically viable, what happened in the town that the town wants you to forget happened in the town, important people, landmarks. They make their characters based on tropes, stereotyped 1980s, Goonies, Stranger Things, E.T., John Hughes style stuff. The mathlete, the brutish jock, the prom queen, the funny sidekick, the conspiracy theorist, all that type of stuff, right? And then they give the GM rumors. These rumors can be based in fact, or they can be based in reality. They can be supernatural in lean, and it's just up to the GM to then take all of the information the players have given them and write the story and decide if the rumors are true or not, and then use those as story hooks for the characters. One of the really great things about this system is that instead of you meet in a tavern and you have a local noble that's looking for adventurers, right? That cold meetup, nobody knows anybody. This game uses what's called relationship questions. Everybody at the table has to pick a character that they know and a character that they don't know. They decide if the interaction that they know was positive or negative, and there's a series of randomly generated questions. A positive interaction could be, what's something that you and this other character are really looking forward to doing this summer that you can't stop talking about? Players can now collaborate, decide what that thing is, decide what it's about, and before you know it, all of the players have now created relationships among their characters without actually playing together. There's now things all of the players can use to interact with. You're not just, hi, my name is so-and-so, I do things, right? Like now they have some actual meat to tether them together. And then it's all collaborative. The GM gives them situations, but the players make up a lot of the drive of the story because they've already built the town. They have a vested interest in the thing that they've done because they were the hands that made it.
So, Matt, why did we choose Kids on Bikes?
Well, from what the slides say.
Well, as you can see what was written here.
As you can see what Jack has told me to say. No, I think, it's interesting because if you start with something like Dungeons & Dragons, often you have to start with a story or pre-made, and you have to build up everything as you go. Rather, with Kids on Bikes, the players create most of everything that's going to happen, and then you can kind of focus more on the applying therapy parts into character creation, into what you do session per session, and overall what the overarching story is going to kind of look like. So for Kids on Bikes, again, it was easy to learn the rule system. There's a narrative style where the player has input. So oftentimes on rolls, if they succeed, they tell me what's going on, sort of thing. And so that's nice because I always find with therapeutic TTRPGs, half of it is planned and the other half is waiting for those aha moments where you can simply say, okay, somebody's got something, they're going to go forward with it, let's stop, let's let them kind of move with the focus. So that's one of the reasons why Kids on Bikes is so great. As well, when we talk about tropes, people pick the type of character they want to play. No joke, in most of the groups, we did not preempt this, but most people picked a loner or weirdo.
They call me out.
Yeah. So we didn't say you have to pick a trope or this or that. We basically identified when we were picking people, we're going to work on social anxiety, play what you want, and so people picked loner or weirdo. So. For myself, a lot of horror or supernatural setting was kind of helpful for the anxiety pieces. So the idea kind of generally to apply the cognitive behavioral model was have a lot of interactions and exposures for things that put people on the spot. So a lot of things that tie into social anxiety and social anxiety treatment. So again, Kids on Bikes is nice for this. And as well, the players, again, were making their own stories. So there's going to be a lot more invested because they're the ones who are telling us the rumors, the landmarks. They're telling us the things they want to investigate, and they're telling us the relationships with everybody else. And so they're really, in the driver's seat for that. So.
Actually, I was going to ask Crimson from your recollection, because Crimson had the benefit of being in Matthew's session.
Survived the game.
Survived the game.
Barely.
So,
Good job.
What even at this point kind of still sticks in your mind, or what do you remember about the
We got the
adventure?
the finger guy at the end. Oh my God. He caused more trauma. I'm kidding. But
That's not what the data says.
but he did a horror campaign so well that I was terrified and excited for next week. And now that I have had time to look back on it, and now that I'm surrounded by therapists for friends, I can catch and pick out some of the really important moments that happened to me. For me personally, I can't speak for anybody else in the group, but and what's nice is when I am having a problem, like walking to a room of professionals, I can remind myself, one of the lessons that I learned is that nobody's judging me. Nobody is judging me as a stranger. Nobody has, preconceived notions. We're all just people. And that was one of the things I had to work with, especially since I do conventions, I do panels, I talk to people. So it makes it easier to come up and sit down and go, okay, these people aren't judging you on anything. They're here to just listen. So it's one of the things that helps a lot.
Yeah, and within, you're going to find out a little bit later on when we discuss more of the methodology and how we kind of utilized, some of these story and their elements. Again, through line is baking into the narrative what you want to work on as clinical goals and targets. We're going to talk a little bit about those in there as we kind of go through. So, what's tabletop role-playing game? I love using this picture. I think we can kind of consider, who in here doesn't know what an RPG is?
Awesome.
Don't you dare, all right. But no, we know what
Never played an RPG in my entire life.
Get out.
Never? Who let that interloper in here?
Muggles.
But this is also what most people think of when they think of a role-playing game. They think of, we have Cheetos, Mountain Dew, we have, folks in weird costume and garb. There's probably Led Zeppelin playing in the background.
Why did I get
Yes,
called
I've
out
just
again?
belied my age. I know, it's, right?
I'm drinking Mountain Dew, man. Leave me alone.
Okay, some of the stereotypes about gamers may be accurate.
Also,
right?
there are no Cheetos anywhere on any of my games. There-
Okay.
no, no.
The cheese.
Cheese
yeah.
dust is like one step below glitter. That's what, it never goes away. And that's
So, Colleen, do you want to talk about the current state of research?
Sure. The current state is that there's not a ton of research in this field, right?
Oh.
So the research that exists is mostly qualitative, which means that it doesn't necessarily rely on a large sample size of people, which can be problematic. There aren't a lot of controlled elements. A lot of the research that's available would be case studies, which for people who aren't super familiar with research, a case study can sometimes involve just one or two people even. So there's not a lot of research. In the research field, we really like to see duplicated research, right? The more that we can duplicate the same result, the more that we can kind of verify that that result is going to be a common result of what we're looking at.
Yep.
So it can also be really heavily impacted by social stigma. How many people remember what the Satanic Panic was in the 80s or have heard of the Satanic Panic, right?
There we go.
So while that has improved over time, unfortunately there's still a lot of stigma around tabletop gaming, and particularly around things like Kids on Bikes, right? The Stranger Things of the world and the D&D of the world. So that can impact whether or not someone is going to put funding into research because they may believe that it could be satanic or they're not taking it seriously as a modality.
We get a lot of calls from people doing this topic as their thesis or their master's work. And one of the biggest barriers they have is their academic advisor, whoever's helping with their PhD or whatever, just going, no. Enough validating your nerdy hobby with a professional research, blah, 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 or even administrations, right? One of the whole reasons we wrote the Wizards of Warriors and Wellness series is because we wanted people to have a short little primer that can explain the basics of what this is to a group that is like, no, right? Even me explaining what I do to my family is now it is, yeah, I help kids. Like, that's how I tell my, because otherwise my mom's like, yeah, but aren't you too old for those games? No,
Right.
very much.
In the clinical world,
Exactly.
like there's also a little bit of stigma I have found from like play therapists sometimes.
Yeah.
Play therapy is like a whole other realm that people tend to separate from therapeutic RPG. They don't consider this necessarily play therapy because of the guided nature of it. So
Yeah.
that can be a really big stigma, and that could impact how people perceive the clinical application of this.
So the goals of our project, you want to take that one, Matthew?
Yeah,
Or you're
sure.
like, oh, I can read.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to make a little bit different is to figure out how to collect data in safe and ethical ways. There have been discussions in the past about making its own kind of measures or screeners about what, therapeutic TTRPGs and such. But really, we already have things. We have things that can, we have screeners for social anxiety and for generalized anxiety and for depression that already exist, and they're clinically validated and reliable. And it's really just, we wanted to figure out a way to actually collect some data, some actual quantitative stuff. So there's that, and then investigating how to match our clinical practices to the qualitative and quantitative measurement of outcomes. So, we wanted to add in people's views and their experiences, but also this kind of outside number that we can help kind of relate to both of those. And then we had gone back and forth about how to start it, but basically we said, you know what, let's just do an exploratory analysis. So let's just do it, a bunch of different types, and then kind of use the data from that to explain what's going on. So,
People don't really understand what we do most of the time, so let's just do something introductory, right? Very kind of surface level.
let's
And-
explore.
Yeah, let's explore. Let's see what this is all about.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to focus on in the key areas of the research was, one, social anxiety was our target structure. So we wanted to know that as a quote-unquote diagnosis or an experiential, system of what people are going through, we specifically chose social anxiety. Now, also though, we wanted to measure the fact that we initially came to this model because we had heard stories from people who were just like, yeah, I'm playing World of Darkness and it helped me with my trauma. And I was like, who's your therapist? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, huh? So the whole idea of the Bodhana model and getting started was, holy crap, people are getting these benefits without guidance or monitor from a trained professional, but they're still getting the benefit, right? So let's look at this for a sec. Is a therapeutically run group different for this symptomology from just a for funsies game, right? And even further, and this is the one that blew some people's minds, what if it was just the fact that the RPG wasn't a central element at all? What if it's just hanging out with other people gets you better social anxiety? So we were trying to see, are there differences? But you also can see from a research paradigm, we're trying to stratify the level or the layer of intervention. First of all, we wanted to make sure that we weren't screwing people up, that we were not causing harm, or that the intervention was counterindicated. But then as we kind of went through, we also said, we need to do a little bit more detail on this. We can't just say, yeah, we gave people an RPG and they said they were better. Thanks, see ya, I'm out of here, right? And we had to do comparative analysis to some degree. And I don't know who wants to mainly take this one, but
I'll take it.
okay, this is one of Matt's specialties.
Yeah. I don't know how he still screwed up after many, many years, but
You're doing
so-
great. This is just like we rehearsed. You're doing great.
Just like we rehearsed, never.
No, because I'll meet with people and I'm like, yeah, we had 4 conditions. We did this, but no, that was this. No, that was
No, we had 5. Oh, crap.
Yeah. So the idea is you have a therapeutic group, which means it's run by at least one person is a therapist or applying therapy, and then the population is socially anxious. You have a recreational group, so it's run by, James, right? Say James. And then, but the population of clients were deemed as socially anxious. You have a therapeutic group, which is run by a therapist, and it's just people who actually so to determine social anxiety, we gave out the SPIN 17, which is a social anxiety screener.
Social
And-
phobia index.
Yeah. And so, of the people who wanted to participate, we gave everybody that sort of piece. And then when we contacted people to be participants, we then did an interview to kind of see if things were safe and where they're at in their therapy and where they are in their wellness and all that. So we could actually stratify the people that were involved by medium and then severe and then very severe sort of thing. So when we talk about normative volunteers, what we're saying is people who took the screener and were and showed very little or no social anxiety.
Because interestingly enough, when we say socially anxious, there were some people, according to the screener, who were indicated to be very severe, who were not included necessarily in the study, because CBT guideline for social anxiety treatment, people who are very severe display, not recommended for group intervention. You do single, individual, one-to-one, and then you transition to group as a step down. So we followed ethical guidelines, not only from the IRB that we had,
Best practices.
but best practices as well from the particular lens that we were using. So again, we're very responsible to the considerations here.
Woo, I'm not severe.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad that we found that out.
Found that out today.
Oh, thank God. Wait, what?
It was today days old when I found out.
And then the 4th group was socially anxious individuals, and then also we did Netflix, and of course we had people watch Stranger Things, which was in line with kids on bikes.
Yeah,
so.
keeping the theme. So even then the genre, we tried to get as replicable as we could with the study, but we had to kind of and this was a discussion point, I think, with the IRB and the university we partnered with. Sorry, I should mention that at the beginning. Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, rate local, we, with them, were awarded a presidential research grant to do this study. So, yeah, when we did that, we wanted replicability for RPG. Everyone's story is different, man. This is why modules aren't typically our recommendation as an organization that advocates for this model, because you can't cut and paste. A lot of, at least from our standpoint, is that this is a very individualized, person-directed, person-centered approach. You're going to put in the story what you need, so we wanted to try to control as many variables as we could, but the group 5 in truth is actually group 4 with one person switched, because we wanted to avoid, what is that?
I can speak to it a bit. So group 4 was watching the show together, and then they could chat with each other, and there's this facilitator. And then, so when we recruited, we said, we'll run a game for you. Do you want to play? And then we felt bad because group 4 were like, well, you're not playing a game. You're going to watch some shows with some friends.
Yeah. I thought this was role-playing.
Yeah, so we said, we'll run a game afterwards.
Right.
And so then we thought, you know what, we can actually gather data just like we're gathering with the other stuff, because it'd be interesting to see a group that's already kind of hung out with each other and formed some bonds that then starts from that point onto a game afterwards.
Yeah.
And so we got the effects of a certain amount of weeks for each of the groups, and then this one was double the amount. So, yeah.
So enabled us to get multiple points of data. And a longer measured period, which is always good for trends. Measures and scales. Most of these are kind of pretty basic and simple, so we won't spend too much time So the GAD-7, generalized anxiety disorder, the SSI, we used a modified version of the social skills inventory for reasons that will be very glaringly obvious in a couple of slides. Matt already referenced the SPIN 17 at the bottom, and then the GSS or the GRSS, Group Relatability and Satisfaction Survey. We wanted a general, are you enjoying the group? Do you feel it's meeting your needs? So these are standardized quantitative metrics. This is what we used.
And then.
Yeah, did we mention that we were set to go in February of 2020? Hey, we're gonna start our groups in April. Is this gonna be boss?
So one of the cool things that ended up happening was a couple of the folks that we had in this group, as we continued to go, it kind of worked out because some of these folks were like, yeah, good luck getting me at a table with real people.
Yeah.
You know,
Strangers, hello, social anxiety. We
Yeah.
didn't think about that in the study design. Were people going to actually show? We thought with the interest, right?
Yeah, so we had to pivot. We did the same thing everybody else had to do when this happened. Jack and I, with our regular groups with Bodhana, we had a very long discussion about, can we really do this online? Is this going to translate? Yeah, apparently it translates really well, for the most part. We had some things we had to learn along the way, but
It definitely crushed my soul a bit, because one of the reasons I was like, oh, let's do social anxiety is because coming to a strange place and meeting all together is in itself a great
Another dynamic,
exposure
yeah.
practice. It's a great kind of like.
It was
group
oddly
practice.
comforting though, because it is, as much as I'm an extrovert, and I don't do well with strangers at times, I could be surrounded by strangers and still be in a safe space, which was my home, my computer, my, setup and everything. So that made it better in respect for me, because going to a place, sitting down, knowing that somebody could be a therapist in front of a group of people. I've done group therapy before. No, thank you. So this made it a lot easier and a lot more comforting.
I like that. Now it's kind of like, one-to-group therapy instead of one-to-one therapy. It's like oh my God, this is the first time I thought of that, the fact that it's kind of like you're an individual, just other people are present. As opposed to group, which is, different dynamic. Wow. All right.
Here I am, dropping truth bombs.
Woo.
good job.
Bombs of truth.
Jack will have learned the most from this panel out of anyone.
It's like, and then we completed. Oh, we completed.
Yeah, we did that. Oh, we got lots of data. We get tons of data.
Yeah.
48 sessions times 2 to 3 hours per over 12 weeks across 4+1 groups. 144 hours of documented clinical interaction. 104 hours of video. We reviewed, also we had independent reviewers. We did a modified because of the online presentation version of the SSI inventory, so we could use it video. So the direct interpersonal, like shaking hands, hugging, we couldn't count those. But we had those evaluated by independent licensed counselors. So we even took social skills markers and had someone else not involved in the group rate how they were doing at intervals during the study. So we even had it external.
So,
Oh, you didn't know that.
no, I had no idea. Again, interestingly enough, we were given in each session time before and time after to talk to everybody. And that, I think, was an amazing social interaction and really helped invest my interest in the people at the table. So we all would have eventually hugged and stuff. And I'm actually still friends with some of the people from the group. We still talk. We don't play games, unfortunately. We're all very busy. But yeah, that was getting to just BS beforehand. How was your week? How you doing? There was general interest in each other's lives and stuff. So that, I think, made it calmer, safer, eventually. That makes sense?
Eventually. Well, and that's part of what we're going to see over time. So, we had 3 validated scales that were completed each week. Independent clinical ratings, we did week 1 to week 6 and week 12 for every participant. That was the SSI. We also, Matt and I wrote clinical notes about what we observed because that is part of the Bodhana model. We did not want to leave out anything, right?
A note per person per week times how
Per
many
week
groups.
for 12 weeks max, right?
Great.
And exit interviews. We had sessions from everybody getting their impression of what they felt they gained. So we did quantitative and qualitative, right? We got a lot of data. In addition, Harrisburg University and Bodhana, we provided treatment to people during a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic, right? So we provided valuable treatment, and that is going to factor in when we talk about later parts of this. Yeah.
Everyone got less anxious.
Oh my God, Matthew! Talk about the
Oh
slides.
yes. So the GAT-7 is really nice at reviewing generalized anxiety, but it's also been used often as a measure just for anxiety overall. So, when we're doing the statistics, because we really hammered out the quantitative statistics, with such a small sample size, nothing was statistically significant because it was basically, 6 people per group, 4 groups, 5 groups anyways. So what we were looking for more was kind of trends overall. And so we could look within the screeners to tell differences. So everybody went down a notch on, I think the GAT-7, it's something like, I don't remember the levels or whatever, but everyone had gone down a level on average, and some people had gone down at least 2 levels in the 24 group. 24-week group survey.
Yeah.
So
Each
everybody
group
got
is
less anxious over time. So what that means is you're looking at people from the start of the group all the way to the end, and with fluctuations. And at one point, we could actually see, and you can see a little bit in the data.
Little bit.
What
It's
was
more
going
in the
on-
spin.
What was going on in week 8? It's like, I think it was a presidential election or something, or blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, there were things that are happening in life. What?
George Floyd.
Oh, yeah, sorry. What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to ask you because I was from Canada.
That is correct. You're like, what the hell's happening? Seriously?
Yeah.
I thought CNN was Canadian Network News.
I know the news a bit. But yeah, it's just
That was marked safe from whatever was going on down
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And then I came down here to visit in person. But yeah, basically you could also just see trends that were going on in the world as raising and lowering that generalized anxiety score. So it's nice to see that it kind of gone down over time, and it wouldn't just, like in most things, if nothing was happening, you might see basically over 12 weeks just the same or ups and downs, and then kind of ending at the same place.
And considering less anxiety during everything that was happening during the pandemic, right? It was not just pandemic, it's Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, a lot of the, I can't say the start of, but the rekindling of, anti-queer and, everything that we had going on, political elections coming up that year, like it was a mess. But still, people generally, you know what, I'm doing all right. My anxiety's going down. In the middle of all that was happening, which is
It was
pretty amazing.
It was a safe haven. This is something to look forward to every week. I mean, even knowing it was therapy, it didn't matter. I was going to sit down with a group of people that I enjoyed. It was something I really looked. Young daughter, I was taking care of my roommate. There was so much going on, and then this pandemic. I'm trying to raise a kid, but you can't go outside and interact with people, and it was like I would sit down in my seat, and it was just that sigh of like, okay, I get a couple hours with some adults to play a game that I like and just have fun and get something out of it.
Just before you,
Oh.
just before you go on too. So this is a lowering in anxiety for therapeutic and non-therapeutic, and the least movement was basically the everyone watching Stranger Things up until.
Raise your hand if you're surprised. Actually, Colleen, are you comfortable talking about that? Only one group showed any change in self-reported social anxiety.
And without giving you guys like tons of CBT theory, which I would probably point to Matt to do anyway, generally what we see with the spin and generally self-reporting social anxiety, people who experience social phobia or social anxiety disorder will often over-report their symptoms, right? They believe that they are worse at socialization than what we might perceive on the outside, in the same way that if like somebody asks you to rate your pain at a doctor's office, you're experiencing your pain. You're going to rate it differently than if that doctor has to rate it based on what they're seeing outside of your body, right? So it's not a huge surprise that self-reported social anxiety didn't change, because individuals with social phobia will often over-report the intensity of their own symptoms. They don't have a harder time, because of cognitive distortion, seeing the change that we can observe from the outside.
I have an individual in one of our groups now that I'm working with that we found out from a parent was a social butterfly now and is in all kinds of social groups at school and joined a D&D club at the college and describes herself as an extrovert, which parents never thought that would happen.
That's huge.
Well, she came to group on Monday, and I'm checking in. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Hey, how was your week? And I'm expecting to hear good things, and I hear, it's terrible. I'm barely hanging on. I'm filled with existential dread. And I went, there we are.
Yeah. You can see that too, when you talk about everybody identifying themselves as a loner, right? We've seen that in other clinical groups that we've run. We talk often about a clinical group that Jack and Cap are running for the agency that I've been working for, where it was individuals who were asked, they were in a pub and they were asked, where are you sitting? And kind of, it's table setting, right, for this narrative. And one by one, all of these individuals, probably 8 people in this group, all of them were like, I'm in a dark corner in the room. And we were like, okay, guys, well, there's only so many corners in this room. You all.
I literally told them, I'm like, you're running out of shadows, guys. You don't have to.
So it makes a lot of sense when you conceptualize that all of these people are dealing with social anxiety, that they would self-categorize as the loner that's in that corner far away from other people.
And an interesting note that we might talk about in another slide is there are, of course, a couple of upticks. Just for mention's sake, we did a lot of check-ins during this group. It was roughly about every 3 months we would do a little bit more of a engaged check-in, shall we say. Matt earlier, mentioned week 9 or week 8. That was, everything was going on in the world. So on week 3, we did a check-in, week 6, week 9. Notice week 10, some ups there, right? That was one of the groups that we had said, okay, we're going to be ready to close the group in another number of sessions, so let's have a little focused discussion on where do we think we're at right now. So we brought that up as a topic in session 9. Wouldn't you know it, we put focus and attention on the symptomology. For some of the people, they rated themselves worse the following week when it came time to come to group and talk, because that's how symptomology works. But that's part of exposure therapy, right? I'm horrible, then I've gotten better, now I'm still kind of horrible, then I'm a little better, right?
Yeah, and if you look at it too, right? If you look at the bands, the first band there goes down by 1 notch. The other band there goes up by 1 notch. The other band goes down significantly, right? The third one I think was, do you remember offhand which one the third one is?
Third is...
Because I think
I hate reading these damn things.
Yeah.
It's like a map of the mall. I think that was group 2, the recreational.
Yeah, so there you go. So the recreational, so an interesting part of the recreational is well, I don't think I'm getting better. I don't think this is therapy. And it's like, yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course, you're watching Stranger Things. Why would it make you, why would that work? So we're all like, oh, that's horrible. I hope, we don't want to respond well, according to your statistical
Actually,
anomalies.
and from the bottom one is the non-socially anxious individual. So they're already apart from the pack there on the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? And so they didn't fluctuate too much,
with
right?
what we kind of expected.
Yeah.
This one doesn't need too much talking. Group satisfaction. Well, actually, no, I could probably ask, besides Matt and
You can tell us what really happened.
creepy
How you really
fingers.
feel.
How was,
Yeah.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied were you with your experience?
I gave y'all a 1 on Yelp anyway already.
Yeah! No one reads that anyway.
So can I give a little background?
Whatever you're comfortable sharing, sure.
So I have complex PTSD along with ADHD, and I've been diagnosed back and forth with a bunch of things since I was 10. At the beginning of the study, I hated therapists and medication. which makes me sitting up here even funnier to me. I was forced to go to a lot of therapy when I was a kid. I had no agency. I mean, this is the 90s. I'm 42 now. So I had no agency. I couldn't pick my therapist. They tried family therapy. That was a disaster. I was forced to take medication that I didn't necessarily need to take. I was in a mental institution, mental hospital for, I think, a week. There's a lot of fog. So being forced by people who didn't care about me to see people who told me that it was all in my brain, obviously, and here, take this pill, it'll make everything better, and it made it worse, I hated therapists. I hated medication. I was never going to do it again. My greatest fear was that I was going to talk to somebody, tell them I had voices, and they were going to send me back to the hospital, which is one of the worst experiences of my life. And I was about 15 when I was in the hospital. So my daughter's born. I think I have borderline personality disorder, which I was diagnosed in the hospital at 15. So I've been living with that for a long time. I have my daughter. She is amazing. She is my tiny demon. She is my chaos goblin. I love her. But that's when things got worse. So now I have this small child. My husband's at work. I'm by myself. I can't leave. I'm terrified. She's going to die at any second. Everything's going to be my fault. I'm going to be my mom all over again. So I finally ended up going to therapy. And it was so hard. I didn't want to do it. I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't want to tell her anything. I was going to be sent to the hospital. I was going to be taken away from my family. The only things that were safe were going to be taken away from me. So this is my thought the entire time. So I started going. And I'm sorry. And it started getting better. And I gave medication a try. Then I could think and feel again. And I didn't resent anything in my life. And I wanted to get better. I wanted to understand. I wanted to try and function like a person. So I had been seeing ads for Bodhana forever. I wanted to work with them because I already started Real Women Gaming by this point, and I wanted to help other people. And that's what we do. We raise a lot of money for charity throughout the year for different charities. And I met this amazing man who never shuts up, ever. And
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Oh, she's talking about him.
It's him.
That's him. That's him.
And you want to play a role-playing game and get some therapy? Hell yeah. No, it's not going to work, but yeah, sure. I'll play a role-playing game. As I said, my best friend had a stroke, was no longer my best friend, but I didn't know that yet. Their personality changed drastically, and I was taking care of them all the time, on top of my daughter, who was under 5 at the time. So I'm thinking, well, at least I can have a break. At least this is for me, nobody else. This is me. And I met some amazing people. I was not terrified of strangers as much. I got to open up about a lot of things that I still have trouble talking about. I was able to tell a group of people that I had trouble with opioids because I have back problems and I had been on them for so long. And I even asked them, I was like, hey, can I tell everybody something first? Can I talk to them? Yeah, of course. And I told everybody. And it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. It was freeing, and it let me talk to other people. It let me tell my doctors, hey, can we do Tylenol 3 instead? Can we, what can we do? Got help from my family, So I've come from addicts. I knew it was going to happen. And I've had a lot of oral surgery, so I've still had to take them. But we have a system now. And I walked out of there with confidence. I'm a better leader. I am a much better mom. I'm an amazing wife. You can ask my husband. And I couldn't have gotten here without it. I couldn't have gotten to where I currently am. And I believed in it so much. I hunted Jack down. And it wasn't until James and Jack at the same time. And James was like, Jack, she's trying to say she wants to work with us to help more people.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, and part of it was, I have to allow a certain amount of time.
Yes.
Otherwise, that is not ethical,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
We had those discussions.
We
Yes,
had a lot
we
of
did.
those
I hear
discussions.
ya.
Yeah.
Wait till the study's done.
Yeah.
I hear
Wait
ya.
till this.
This
Wait
is
till
what
that.
This is
Yep.
what we'll write up. This is what
Yep.
we'll do for.
Do you guys take volunteers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not yet. We're getting there.
Soon.
Yeah.
In a little while, yeah.
But I think what's so meaningful about like everything that you just, first of all, you're a badass. I mean, like that's an incredible story.
Thank you.
Like,
And thank you for saying it.
yeah,
Seriously.
like for sharing
Thank
it
you.
and for being able to be that person that's going to share it with other people. But when we speak on the Bodhana model, we talk so much about the variant reasons why traditional therapy can be traumatizing,
Yeah.
unsuitable for other people, especially teens and young adults who have been forced to go to therapy without their consent. This can be a model that allows people to feel comfortable going to therapy again.
Yeah, and that's something that I strive for. There's so much stigma around everything that we do and that we need as individuals, as patients, as doctors, as social workers. And I have so many friends who are just a mess. And they're not a mess because they don't want to get better. They're a mess because they're scared. They're scared to get help. They're scared of the same thing I was scared of. I'm going to be sent to a hospital. I'm going to be taken away. They're going to tell me I'm crazy. I'm going to be so drugged up. I'm going to be a zombie. And I love the fact that I can sit down with them and go, I'm not a therapist, nowhere near it. I barely graduated high school. But let me tell you what I've been through and how you can do this. So I've encouraged people. I have a friend who figured out he was bipolar. You know, I talk to people. You can fire your therapist. Don't like your therapist? That's fine. Fire your therapist. We'll look for a new one. Like I'll give you the ideas of what I have. You know, look for reviews on Yelp. You can Yelp your psychiatrist. It's fine. Like check your medications. If it doesn't feel good, hey, let's try another one. You don't have to take it if you don't feel good. Like, so being able to be on the other side and talk to people about it, how important therapy is. And you don't have to have PTSD. You don't have to have ADHD. You don't have to have any of these things to talk to somebody to get through it. So.
And a lot of, segueing a lot of what Crimson is talking about into this is, again, Matt referenced this earlier, not hugely earth-shattering data that we have. I mean, the social skills inventory is always awesome because this is the externally validated measure, right? So this is not self-report because our participants were like, nope, I'm still not doing well, not doing friends at all. The way the SSI works, the higher your number, the more behaviors are displaying that indicate you have problems with social interaction. That graph clearly tells us that while you're reporting you're not doing so well, and that your anxiety is through the roof, and you're not peopling, measurable, observable behavior from someone just watching the group, nope, you're pausing for other people to talk, you're waiting for you're listening more intently, you're not doing other work in the background, because you can notice all of these things in Zoom, right?
Yeah,
So
let's speak to that a little bit. So,
Yeah.
So it's so having the two therapist model or the two facilitator model is so huge because one of us is running the game and the other we're checking in the background, we're checking in as we go.
Using private chat.
Yeah, like, this person's laying down, maybe you should have a private chat to see if they're
Oh my
okay,
God.
or this person seems to be doing their homework. Maybe a little, instead of me interrupting the game, I can be like, hey, Jack, there's somebody.
Is that Minecraft I see in your glasses?
Right. Okay, some of you work with youth in an online capacity. All right, you're my people.
I even got one. Jack sent me a message. He goes, "Hey, looks like you're having a bad time." I got a message and it was written all over my face because I can't hide it. "Hey, how's it going? Everything okay?" Just told him real quick what's happening. Do you want to stop? Do you need
If you
need
want to talk
anything?
about it in the group, not right now.
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool, let me know if that changes.
And
then I
that
checked
helped.
in a couple, like 15, 20 minutes later. How we doing?
Yeah.
The group had no idea what was going on, but you were heard, checked in on,
That felt amazing.
And then we have the debrief before and after for ourselves as well.
Correct.
But if you notice, the one group that goes up and down is the non-therapeutic social anxiety group, right? So their behaviors of getting along actually peaked, and so higher is worse, right? So
Yeah.
they peaked and then they went back to normal. So yeah, kind of normal.
Always, good indications. So what did we learn throughout all of this? Hey, I know that guy. And that's Doug, another one of our board members.
I was gonna say, it might look like a little bit like me, that's not me.
Yeah, and that's me, obviously, because that is my signature convention vest. But we
You didn't
we,
have the hat. I couldn't tell.
No, not at
Matt,
that
you and
time.
Doug look like you're posing for an album cover.
That was before facial hair and before lasers.
Well, teenage angst in that picture.
It was a really bad game. So.
Actually, hey, I was running a game. No, actually, it was a bad game because that was the one that we were working on with that other company that fell through. Yeah. So, key cognitions, basically, without prompting, folks would discuss name observations, key cognitions related to social anxiety. So, and Mark Crimson Pleasure kind of illustrated that earlier, where it was like, we're sharing things, some observations, actually kind of more direct, what you were saying about having that, the more increased observation of the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Where, do you remember the particular, I don't know how vivid it was, but the characters and the things that we were using in the game? Because one of your reactions is actually referenced in here, so it's interesting you're here to speak on it.
Okay.
Of when you were having reactions in the game, and you had that, I call it the therapeutic WTF moment, where you're having a reaction to something, and I don't know, did you know what I'm referring to?
Not exactly.
Okay, where you were having a visceral reaction to a character in the narrative, and you were having an emotional moment, and part of you was like, the hell is wrong with me? This is a game.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? Like, if you remember more of
I
that.
don't remember
Yeah,
the
I mean,
moment.
my God, it was like 4 years ago at this point.
I remember the feeling.
Yeah, that'll work.
Because I had a lot of time to process things, and I have learned that, and this is from that group, that if I'm having that reaction to something, that it's time to talk to my therapist. So this is something I'll bring up in therapy. And then I will tell my therapist, this is the character I had a reaction to, this is what my reaction was. Because I identified that in that moment, in those games, that this is important, even if I don't know why, if I can't remember what happened. Something happened for a reason. I reacted that way for a reason. So, yeah, I wish I remembered the moment though.
I don't remember direct because that was.
Ran it.
Yeah, do you remember?
No, not in particular. There's a lot of them, but I think it's just, again, but that's what emotions are for, right? To point out in the environment, one of the aspects is to point out in the environment things you should pay attention to, or that you are paying attention to you don't know. So it's saying, blinker light for, I feel things about this. I should really go investigate. Or
Very
Maybe,
mindfulness, a lot of
maybe
DBT, right?
there's some trauma here.
Right. Maybe
Just a little bit.
There's a reason this is making me feel the feels, right? And that's part of, again, we didn't sit at the beginning of the session and say, Okay, today we're going to be utilizing an NPC character that is designed to elicit latent emotional response. Like, no! Matt and I just said, okay, this is something they wanted to work on. Do you remember it?
No, I actually remembered something else.
Sure.
I remembered remember nearly breaking down, because I fashioned my character after me. There was very little difference between me and the character I'd chosen. So there was a point in which my character had abusive parents and everything like that. I went to the T with it, and my character stayed in an abandoned, spooky house most of the time. And we were going to go into that house, and I stopped everybody, and I let them know that they were all going into my safe space. And I remember wanting to cry when I was telling them that. Like, please don't judge me. This is the only safety I have here. And that still pops up every once in a while when I'm taking a shower, and I'm like, not now. Not now, Brain. Wait till Wednesday when we can talk to the therapist. But there are a couple of times I had reactions like that where it was way more emotional than I understood and intended. And I was like, okay, what's going on?
And that's, yeah, sure.
So, and what's interesting about that is, so as the DM, it's like you notice somebody's having a reaction to this, and again, half the moments are you set something up or you have a plan in mind, and the other half are these in-the-moment pieces where you're like, let's sit for a second, let's go into it. How am I going to build a spooky house now that is respectful, follows the story, but also doesn't put the person off and plays along with what they would like to express, and what they, like kind of working with somebody to kind of do that piece, right? I've just learned it's a safe space. Oh, okay, yeah, I guess it is. Ooh, okay. So how am I going to describe the safe space, but also move the story, but also be respectful, but also not trigger further? And so that's why having the two-person is also helpful, because we could check in as we go. Just to speak on this piece here, the ideal, if we had all the money in the world, is to have the one-to-one therapy on social anxiety and then run the groups kind of through it, because then people have an idea of things. What's so nice to see and hear is things like imposter syndrome, fear of social critique, hypersensitivity to social evaluation. And I'm not bringing it up. It's when we do the check-in or check-out, someone's like, I felt like a bit of an imposter, and it's like,
Oh, right.
good. I guess that's what I was going for. It's just they're listening for us, or other people who are in therapy were like, well, I talked to my therapist and they identified this. I'm like, yeah, that's what.
Or people like, I'm kind of new at role playing. I really suck at this.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you're fine. Like,
And
what are you talking about?
And it's moments like that when they're having these aha moments in your session that a system like Kids on Bikes is so good for this mode, because as the GM, I can come up with some of the concepts of what this spooky house might look like, but then I go to the player, because this is so collaborative, and I can say, okay, we're walking in. Crimson, describe what the front room looks like for us. Like, what's the first thing we see when we come in, right? Eventually, I can take the reins at any point that I want to, but I'm getting the initial feedback from the player because that's what the system's designed to do. I'm not copping out at that point. I'm not trying to avoid something. It allows us to still have this very collaborative, seamless narrative, but allowing the player to expound on that aha moment that they're having and not break any of their emotional attachment to the scene by now getting into minutia and details.
So it sounds like you're really emphasizing that player agency to give them that space of control where they may not have it elsewhere in life.
Yes, and ultimately that's what you want to see your players doing. So a system that lets you naturally progress that just as part of what they as the players are experiencing is very unique from a lot of other game systems that don't have that kind of collaboration built in, where it's just very natural for somebody to say, yeah, the vice principal was really upsetting me. Cool, what's the vice principal's name? What do they look like? Why are they upsetting you? you're building an NPC for me. I'm not asking this just because it's an off-the-cuff question. I'm going to bring this person back as a villain at some point.
For example, does the vice principal have a behavior that just every time you see him do it annoys the hell out of you? Abe, you're smiling kind of weird. What behavior would you give to a vice principal, and then tell me the real person it's based off of? No, just kidding.
Well, it's more that, like, talking about the whole giving characters flaws that can elicit a response in another player. I
Yes.
actively put that into an NPC in a game I'm running. The character has no concept of personal space, and that creates that opportunity for response in kind. And I could imagine somebody putting that as again, we have this vice principal character who, he has no concept of personal space, he's up in your face anytime he's talking to you, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And my smile was more of just like, oh, this is interesting.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
good.
but the gears are turning of, oh, that would be fun to use. Not,
No, for me, yeah.
Froman!
Excellent points.
Yeah.
Colleen?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit, just the incongruence between what people were self-reporting in terms of the intensity of their social anxiety versus what the independent clinicians were able to evaluate using the SSI. So individuals reported themselves as not improving significantly, even though clinicians were seeing that the behavior that was exhibited was improved. And this is kind of just in adherence with what we see with individuals with social anxiety. I do think it's interesting though, like when you spoke a little bit about the idea of creating player agency. I think that really touches, again, back to what Crimson had said about like the lack of agency that comes in mental health treatment a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
And
especially for kids and teens.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
it made it, I actually gave a shit. I mean, like,
Right.
I cared about what was happening, and I felt heard and appreciated and understood, which was something I wasn't used to.
Absolutely. And that sense of like that being a safe environment where you feel understood and people are listening to you also creates kind of a perfect space for cognitive reframing and for people to reality test their own ideas about how good they are at something, what they might think about certain things. Like if you're in a room full of people that you don't have that rapport with or that sense of trust, then they can tell you that you're great at something until they're blue in the face and it doesn't matter because they're just lying to you, right? So being able to have that sense of agency, the ability to like bleed into your character and make your character whoever you want to be or close to who you are or separate from who you are, that creates all of these little pockets for that reality testing to happen.
And just getting into the stats a little bit that we didn't present here. So when you see most of the social anxiety lines, you're putting everyone kind of together. And so in each group you had very high, and then medium. So when we even, it's hard because there's so little people, but when you really parse it out, if you saw that people were with the really, really high, they didn't, like no one got worse, but overall they got some people a little bit better, but for the social anxiety piece, for the spin. Yeah. But when you break it down by category, medium or high, they actually had a bigger jump than those who were at the very high, because group work is not going to have that same impact for people who are scoring very, very high. They need the one-to-one to start and then bring them down to that moderate level and then practice,
Well,
right? So.
Taking those questionnaires is also anxiety-inducing.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. Like we're having a great time. We're like, and then Jack's like, don't forget, you have to fill out, and then
do the survey.
Yep.
yeah. I think we had to do this.
These symptoms that probably produce like emotions on their own.
Yeah, it's like, so how is your anxiety this week? And I'm like, well, now it sucks because I have to take a quiz of how I'm feeling.
I need you to fill out these forms, Wazowski.
Yeah. And it was, and like as you were saying, oh, like the self-report was like the symptoms, and I'm sitting here thinking, Crimson, you reported your feelings the same every week about. I never deterred because I'm thinking outside the box. And I'm like, well, doing this and going to this place and stuff like that's all anxiety and stuff like that. And then having to tell people how anxious I am, makes me anxious. And so there's no way I answered any of that truthfully. There's no way. Couldn't have happened.
Which all is normal. But going on some other, like as far as for information, some trends that we also noticed, and again, none of this is earth-shattering pieces of information. People who were concurrently in other forms of therapeutic supports did better in their stats, their evaluation, than people who were not. A lot of times in Bodhana, group therapy is not the only modality we provide. We do support work, one-to-one sessions with clients who are in group. We also work and collaborate very heavily with other persons on that person's support team. Go ahead.
In concurrent therapy, assisting at the same time as the study, were all those participants seeing a therapist related to Bodhana, or were they seeing also outside?
At that time, no one in the study was having sessions with us individually. It was all an external therapist. Yep. But yeah, we basically, and it's, Crimson just said it earlier. Crimson had a therapist that she felt more comfortable talking to about things that happened in the game. That's how this is supposed to work. You don't fully process an individual's catharsis in the middle of a group with 6 other people. You don't do that until a certain way, where you're at that point as a group. You go, wow, interesting. Had that reaction.
And that's pretty linear for all forms of group therapy, right?
Right.
Like you're probably not going to have somebody that's going to, unless it's like really targeted for that exact
Or
intention
like
of
an
processing.
intensive group.
Yeah, exactly, like an IOP or a partial. But that's the case with a lot of group therapy, that you're not necessarily going to get into the nitty-gritty of everything with everyone.
And maybe even at that moment.
Yeah, but it was nice. The check-ins were nice, and that. But also, it may sound weird, but it was nice that I had conversations, not with you too, about what was happening. So now I have another person who wasn't there. It wasn't 6 people. We're in my safe space with her, focusing on me and why I did this thing without other people's opinions. Not that I didn't value everybody's opinion, but
Right.
It's taking one situation into another, and it's being able to transfer my trauma from one safe space to another where we can dissect it and figure out why that happened.
And going kind of even further when we talked about, because I want to make sure I'm saving time for questions, so I don't want to rush, but yeah, thank you. TTRPG group where we talked a little bit about the whole, social phobia index. People who are moderate to nuns did better and improved more than those who were very severe down to the moderate, right? We already talked about why that is, right? The grouping of the data and such. We had a lot of self-exploration. One of the biggest reveals, I guess you could say, is, and again, Crimson, you kind of, you telegraphed a lot of this, which is awesome. People created characters from very different standpoints. Some people, very similar, like, yep, I'm making me, but I'm going to replay life's events to make it different. A lot of people did that. We talk in our trainings about approach characters versus avoidant characters, right? I'm playing more of me. No, I'm playing me I want to be versus me I don't like parts of me. And these opportunities, and what we found actually was Crimson was kind of literally one of the first people in the groups who started to have these aha moments. And again, Matt and I, during that group, we were not like, tell everybody what you learned this week, Crimson. Like, tell them all the happenings, right? No. It was, interesting, do you want to share more? Okay, that's cool. And then slowly, as with any other groups, we started to figure other people doing this, and then other people started to talk more about their own PTSD and their own scenarios and who they were talking to. Like, we saw so much connection that happens because people were seeing, well, wait, this applies to my character too. And Matt and I had to sit back. We couldn't go, yes, it's because all of you have very similar symptomology. So we made things that would be, group. It's all about economization, right? I can't do 6 separate things every hour, every week. So we got to kind of group. Yeah, we can do this. It's going to hit 4 years as opposed to 2 this time, but
We come to it at different speeds because
Yeah.
the groups are not we can tell them that it's a safe space until we're blue in the face. That space is earned. It's not just established by
built.
the person running the group. Crimson sharing things among that group starts to show some of the other people in this group work mode that, okay, so it's okay for me to talk about some of my things because this other person shared and put themselves out there. It feels that much safer. And then somebody else does it. It feels that much safer. So people come to it at different times and at different speeds while they're exploring their characters, and then they can have this moment and be able to share that space together as they all kind of come to that comfort level.
And that bonding is part of the support group aspect of it, right? Crimson mentioned earlier, again, you telling it so beautifully. And
You're really doing.
this is your first panel on this with us.
Yeah.
And it's not like I've been telling Jack for 3 years, hey, you should have me talk to people because I was a client and now I'm the president.
Still hanging out with.
President?
We don't have president, but
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I knew what the.
You're
okay.
the captain, I'm the pirate captain, we're good.
We're,
yeah, and I,
Space captain, pirate captain.
I'm fine
Sure.
with that.
All right, we're the president now.
We're the captains.
so
Okay.
so
Hey,
in
I'm the
general,
captain
I'm
now.
the captain
I'm
now.
the captain.
third base. So
Not everybody's that old, Jack.
that is true. That is true. Who called my reference?
There you go.
Ah, people. All right.
I got a YouTube video for you if you didn't. World of Warcraft, though, more relatable.
There you go.
So future research, we need more exploration of this topic. We need more studies, but we need more studies that are measuring this in a quantitative way relevant to the demographic or target, like what we're working on in those groups. If you're working on depression, use Bex, right? Use what we already have. People are trying to over-chrome this engine of RPG because it's flashy, it's new. Stop that. This is clinical. It needs integrity and the same consideration as any other therapeutic practice out there, which means use what we know is research-oriented. Don't try and make it fancy because look at a cool eye, man. I run RPGs for kids. Stop it. I've seen people run panels, then that is the attitude. Like this rebel presentation, I'm like, how serious are you about this? Is there a coolness factor to it? Yes. But that's not why we do it. We do it, or we should be doing it, because it works. And we have to analyze why it works. We need that deeper investigation of the topic. And we can't be afraid to ask questions in a way that might say, you could probably get the same result if you just kind of got everybody together, you know. Are board games different from RPGs? Who the hell knows? No one studied that yet. Right?
Ooh.
We're getting there. Yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
And also we need to increase the sample size. Trouble with that though, groups shouldn't be, in our opinion, larger than 6 with younger children. They shouldn't be younger than more than 4 to 5 players. Just the level of attention. That means we need to run a lot of in groups to get the sample sizes we need, right? But it's also about educating people about the more traditionally held ideologies regarding research methodology. There's other ways to build a mousetrap, right? It doesn't. Go ahead. We're pretty much almost through. Actually, we are through the remainder.
Hey!
Hey! Well, okay. In fairness, holy crap!
Yeah.
It looks like a football game. Yay! Sports ball. Go ahead.
On that note, if it's okay to share the slides, or that was a great slide that you just, of like all the different papers, it's very helpful.
Oh yeah, with that email, we can send you copies of the slides. Go ahead.
Sorry, just because I know the topic.
Sure.
No, it's fine.
Much of it, but, we were planning to run a similar study. We ended up, the person that was going to be behind it sort of got left. So, but we want to redo it, and we're reimagining what it would look like. We have the IRB that we wrote for the original study, but one of the things that has come up with studies like this is that writing IRBs is a really challenging and complex thing to sort of really be able to communicate in that way, and it can be stressful. And one of the things I was wondering is, depending on the sort of like the rules of the given institution, are there ways to make elements of that IRB available so that if you're wanting to run a similar study at a different institution, that you know the kinds of things that you might be running into and can embed them? I know that it's complex across institutions. It's not like
It really depends upon the nature of the IRB, the grant, the funding stream for it. I would probably say, in fairness, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this, there would more than likely be a way like to have some type of like a consultation in a way, like maybe we don't send you like so you copy paste it kind of example, which I know is not what you're suggesting, but that way we could say, okay, what do you got so far? And as long as they're okay, we can say, well, in our study we ran into this, or this looks similar. This is what our, if that's what, is that what you're talking about?
Or even like, for instance, like for the thing that we're talking about doing, in my personal specific case, like we already wrote the IRB for the most part.
Right.
They might kick it back and do the back and forth. But for other studies that we want to do, that's always this huge hurdle of like how to best structure that and thinking about it. And even if it was for other groups that were thinking about doing it, whether it was sharing the IRB, that we have to get like, analysis or something like what might be something important to include. But that kind of consulting that you just mentioned, I think is very valuable in the same way that you were talking earlier about people's advisors being resistant to supporting the thing.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing you run into with IRB boards, right? Where you have these institutional bodies and it's so abstracted, they're just like, they don't get it or they don't see it. And so having proven methods that get through is something that can be very helpful. That's come up with me with other groups with VR-related work. It's like you have all these people doing VR-related work, and it's like you cannot get anything through the IRB because no one on the IRB panel knows anything about VR.
Sorry, Dr. Jameson said no. Everyone's like, blah, 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 Jameson. So, no, you're right.
It would be worth a bigger discussion. One of the ways that we got through our IRB is I sit on an IRB.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came in, I was like, I'll help you out, sort of thing. But I mean, it's probably more of a consultation thing or just a talking thing because specifics.
Because it is, I mean, again, in the era of hashtag first, planting flags, people are very protected. And again, I'm sorry if this is too much of a soapbox for the group, but I think we'll agree. We got to stop worrying about whose name is on something, and we have to worry about if we all want to keep doing this and doing it well, we need to share our information so we have full integrity.
Yeah, I
Your
think
research paper supports the work of all the other research papers.
Exactly, as opposed to, I want to write the first book that sells the most copies. Stop that.
Yeah, if it's one person doing valid research, then it's one person doing valid research. If it's 15 different organizations that are researching aspects of or doing the same thing, then more people start to wonder and pay attention and go, oh, what's this thing people are interested in? I'm going to go,
Wait a second, Colleen.
The only thing I was going to say is I think the benefit of consultation is absolutely that, to Jack's point, the different grants, the different IRB boards, they're all looking for something different based on why they're giving you money. So consultation with like somebody who's familiar with working with IRBs can give you that idea of like, here's what they might want, here's like what they might want to hear from you, what
Bodhana
they
has no trouble helping out.
Yeah.
Let us know when you would like to converse. We would be more than happy to support that and to help it come to fruition.
Does that answer what you were asking about?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. No, it's fine. I just want to make sure we answer what you need.
Look, tons of time.
So I'm going to go over here, and then you had your hand raised, and then I'll bounce over there.
Oh, wait.
Fair?
Two points.
Sure.
The IRB question. So I'm a research ethicist by background and profession. So this is a trope of the IRB world. You have to be careful that you have an expert who's able to review your research. Ask them to provide a consultant to the IRB. Because that's actually in the regs. If they don't have the expertise, they need to get it in order to have ethical research. The other thing is, of course, have someone who serves on an IRB look at it. That always helps. But use the IRB itself as a consultant, because most IRBs in the world don't want to say no. So if you go to them and say, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're proposing, help me understand, I want to protect research subjects too. If you go in it with that frame of mind, sometimes you'll see a better movement. The other thing about like sample size, I mean, name a psychology kind of research project that doesn't involve small sample
Right.
sizes. We have statistics to
Right.
cover that. We'll use the non-parametric ones. I mean, I don't
Yep.
understand why the world can't understand this.
Neither can we. People are like, wait, you only had 30 people?
That's a lot.
Right, and I was like, well, apparently 2,000 people in a year were interested enough to go, whoa, and that's not even counting the ones we send
Yeah.
to partners and requests for research for like papers and stuff, so.
And that's particularly
We'll get there.
challenging when you're talking about group work, because it's not just a game is not good once you get past a certain amount of people, but group therapy is not good when you have one facilitator and you go past a certain group of people.
Yeah.
You
Your
know?
paper's gonna be that much longer having to address all those criticisms and critiques.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's like how the journal's gonna say, you don't need that.
Yeah.
We went from 50 to 22 pages.
Yeah, we had to cut it down to fit in the journal, and we lopped a lot off that, buddy.
Those are just the other articles. You know, make that into a new one.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting there.
I get tired.
So you had a count on how many hands?
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
you wanted to comment on that?
Because you spoke to a lot of what I was talking about. I was going to share about ethics, especially if we like start bringing up bringing children
Oh,
and
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
how much social
Which
anxiety
is why we did
and
adults.
activity.
Yeah, and this was adults like kind of for that,
Right.
for some of those
So I think,
reasons.
like, you know, that being really mindful of the harm that could be caused. But a lot of like programs I've used just use a basic pre-post and also just a satisfaction survey. So if we came up with like a common pre-post that we were using and then lots of people were using it, that would be a really simple way to collect data.
Yeah, no, definitely in the simple, and this is just one of the things, because again, we collaborate because we haven't been around forever, and there's a lot of great organizations who have been looking at research for a while. There's Game to Grow, there's RPGresearch.org.com, Hawk Robinson, there's also Dr. Megan Cannell, there's a lot of folks doing very good research, and a lot of people still are like, well, let's develop an RPG metric, and I'm like, and I'm not saying that's what you're suggesting, because one of the problems is, if we look at it as, what is the standard, we've had a lot of discussion, because I think Game to Grow was looking at trying to do like an RPG metric for a while. For where I was talking about, what is it about the RPG that makes it beneficial? Like, well, we're not measuring the RPG, we're measuring the efficacy of the approach. So we should utilize what's already there. Now, if we're talking about a way to make maybe collection methods maybe simpler for, let's say we're looking for external metric validation from parental or TSS, like wraparound services, things like that, to check for other external variables on impacted behavior, that's a great idea. A simpler metric or a way to, it's screeners versus the full boat assessment piece.
Well, and I've just done a lot of pre-posts in different groups I've get done, but also like for a lot of us that bill insurance, we're doing like a biopsychosocial in the beginning. So that's like a pretty consistent thing that's happening, and that's almost like your session 0 of your, your intake.
I like that.
And that's where you're gonna like gather your information with a client before putting them in a group to see if they're even appropriate for
Right.
the group.
You did that, yeah.
Yep, yeah, because we did the screener to get them into those respective groups, then we used the metric consistently to measure trends and progress, so, excellent. Abe?
Could you expand more on what you were mentioning earlier about the stigma of using tabletop role-playing games as a therapeutic tool in the play therapy community? Because I pitched this to a lot of play therapists, and it's generally gotten a good response, and I would love to hear more from you who had that experience.
Sure, yeah, and Jack, I know you can piggyback off of this as well, because you've had many a conversation with many a play
Tag me in,
therapist.
coach.
So there are some that are very receptive. I find that the younger ones or the individuals who are like really intently focused on newer research on play therapy can be a little bit more open. But I think that one of the hurdles that I have found in speaking with play therapists is that they don't factor in an intervention as play therapy if it's with adults.
That's one.
And
That's
yeah,
one.
and they don't necessarily consider like the impact of play. There are studies on geriatric patients in play therapy and the impact of that, right? So
The brain doesn't truthfully stop growing and changing at 25, kids.
a lot of neuroplasticity still happens. And the other piece of that is that many play therapists consider structured play to not be applicable in a play therapy
Or
space.
directive play,
Right.
as they might refer to it within the lingity
Where like,
of the practice.
you know, like sandbox work or the type of like traditional play therapy, not considering PCIT, which is more like interactive, but traditional play therapy is often like not as directed, right? We don't want to plant seeds in the heads of kids who are in play therapy. So I think a lot of people misunderstand that because we're creating this narrative, that we're going to plant things in the heads of people who are participating in the narrative.
Or that we force or railroad. I think they look at it as railroading.
Which is really funny because in our model, the way that we function, in the beginning of our games, every group that I've ever run, I don't guide shit for the first like 4 to 6 weeks, because it's the Tuckman, like, you know, storming, norming, conforming, all that stuff. Like, I can't force norming and conforming if we haven't done the storming, right? Like, so I have to wait for that to take place. I can't guide anything in the beginning of this. Really, I can give them a game to play in. I can give them a sandbox. I can tell them what color the sand is, and I can give them the tools to make the castles. They still have to do it.
I also
right?
think it
So,
comes from like maybe a misunderstanding about tabletop role-playing games for some of those people. Anybody who has GM'd a game recognizes that you set up the pins and then they can just walk around the pins and not even touch them.
Yeah,
they can blow on them. They can light them on fire.
Well, examine most of, and I'm not talking necessarily about Critical, well, I won't talk about Critical Role because I don't watch it. But I don't do live plays typically. But like things like media representation of role-playing games, and even things like Harmon Quest, or, you know, some of these games, it's not really technically how an RPG works. It's good TV, right? Because typically, like Big Bang Theory, which, know my mother-in-law, it's not how we are. But like they're playing in the thing, and it's literally one person telling everyone what is happening and guiding everything, and it's just occasionally a roll, and then I'll tell you what happens as a result. So I think it is partial education. Thankfully, it's becoming not as taboo just to be a player, let alone satanic tag stuff, right?
Well, the media really, the media, it's a lot different because, okay, so we do tabletop role-playing shows on my channel, on the Real Winner Gaming channel. That's different. I had somebody once say, if this feels like work, you know, why are you even playing? And I'm like, like, I put on makeup, I turn on my lighting, we make sure everything's okay, there's mood music, like, that's completely different. If I'm playing with my friends, like, I may have my hair in a bun, I may have showered that day, like, that, I've got Cheetos, and I've got the beloved Cheetos, and I'll get up and go to the bathroom, and I won't ask, we don't have to take a break. Like, it's a lot different.
does that answer what you were looking for?
Okay.
Cool.
We got a Menachem in the back, and then over here.
Regarding play therapy, Brian Quinones will be here tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes.
Certified and in play therapy and as a supervisor.
Yep. Doing a lot of work to change the title. Acceptance.
Yeah. Brian is a very, very knowledgeable dude about a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
And we'll connect you, Abe, because I know that you can't be here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Or I can make some calls on your behalf, cancel some plans, you know, as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Listen, you got that wormhole up running? I haven't.
Hold on.
I haven't talked with Brian about his having to work today and this. Tell me he's to grow like.
The only thing I was also going to add to the conversation about play therapy. I work with a play therapy supervisor. I mean, that child-centered approach that's so critical, where they think that it's, you know, steamrollering if we lay out, you know, the groundwork.
Right.
There's also no group play therapy. I mean, that's kind of, there's a complete mismatch when you're not getting a bunch of 7-year-olds together who are all having behavioral challenges and plopping them in a room together and going, everybody come on, let's play. So there's a complete modality difference between group play and individual play that I wonder if also is just maybe not part of the stigma, but the misunderstanding of how is this play therapy? It's a whole group of people.
Right.
When play therapy, again, unless you're doing PSIT, is
Yeah.
something where predominantly it's therapist, child. Now we've got a group of people. How does that translate? So I wonder if that's perhaps less of a stigmatizing as much as just a how do you do play with a group. That's not how play therapy is taught.
Yeah.
Awesome point.
As a patient, there are people out there who are not so certified. School therapists don't need any kind of certification. So I will tell you just a tiny story. I had a school therapist when I was in elementary school, and she made me play with dolls in a dollhouse. And then they took us in for testing because my father was molesting me. He was not. So what was happening was my sister, who is 11 years older than me, was having sex with her boyfriend in the same bunk beds that we were in. That was trauma, going through all of that testing. My dad trying to explain. Now, my dad's was not a perfect person, but he didn't do that. And so now I have new trauma because somebody who wasn't trained wanted me to play with dolls and explain what was going on or why I was saying things in the classroom. They didn't sit me down with a therapist or a child psychiatrist. And that ruined almost an entire year of our lives. So on the other side of the table, if I were not here and somebody was like, hey, we're gonna have your kid like play with stuff, I'd be like, no, get to hell, not happening. Because I have a terrible experience that ruined so much of my life. But hopefully we can educate people.
Yeah, and I think because the other thing that I know that I've noticed, whether it's play therapy, drama therapist, narrative therapy, all the schools, everybody comes up with, again, the planting the flag, everybody comes up with their own term to refer to it. Like people are arguing, was it therapeutically applied RPG? Is it therapeutic tabletop role playing? Who cares what we're calling it? It's not about branding, right? It's about collaborating. But I like that, let's get the play therapist together with the drama therapist, and people use RPG from different lenses. Hey, can we share success, failure stories, pitfalls, things we've learned? We've learned a ton, but people are like, no, we're okay. We don't need to converse about what thing. And I'm like, all right, I'll just keep moving until I find the person that wants to collaborate, and then we'll develop a network, and we're fine. And that's what Bodhana does. So anyone wanting to assist getting things, there's a lot of folks. I know Sarah Lynn Bowman is a huge presence out there. David, you're part of a lot of those discussions, trying to get people to share ideas with each other. Yeah, we're already over our panel
Yeah, it's
time.
fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So 2 things. One, thank you all. No,
Nope, you're fine. Thank you for attending, everybody.